Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Jill here. Jill, you're somebody that's been in the real estate space for some time, and you've also really shown everybody the example of how successful a team can be, and the team approach is really an excellent approach. You guys have done, incredible numbers, of course, but you've really taken care of your clients at like the highest level. I think the reviews of the work that you've done are some of the best reviews I've ever seen because it's something that you really care about a lot, the relationships in the space. And I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you just said.
Awesome.
And I
Awesome.
can start from the beginning if you want, or whatever
Yeah,
way you
let's
want.
do it.
Okay, so I was born here in Miami, and that I think has been an advantage in my profession because I I was born here. I rode my bike on every street. I swam in every waterway. This was part of my DNA. So later in life, when I started to sell real estate, it wasn't complicated. I had a friend who lived on that street. I had another friend on this street. And so this city itself made a lot of sense to me. And I understood, the whole layout of the land, so to speak. So I grew up here. I went to University of Florida in Gainesville. I came back to Florida. I got married. I've actually been married 47 years.
Amazing.
Um,
Congrats.
Thank you. And the best part is I love them now more than I did when I got married. So it's not just the years, it's where you're at. And then we had three kids. They're now, two of those three work with me. One, my oldest one, Jerry, when she got out of GW, she came and worked with myself. And at that time, I had a partner, Jill Zeder, the two of us. She worked with us for a year and said, "This is not for me. I don't want any part of this. I'm going to do something really stable and normal. I'm going to law school." So she went to law school at University of Florida, met her husband. They've been married now 10 years, have two kids, my wonderful grandkids that are 8 and 10. And that was perfect for her. And so to go back, once I graduated college, I had a love for photography. So I was doing photography. I was actually working the cameras at the local ABC network here. I was running those big Ikigamis and going out with the reporters. And I got my first job in Palm Beach, and I was driving almost an hour to work, working an hour and a half back. And it just got too much. So I moved over to Bird Irons, which is federated here. I went in their assistant buying program, except when I interviewed, they said, "You don't have any business experience. It's all photography and journalism." And I said, "Oh, I didn't know I need that." So they said, "You start as a sales girl." So I literally started as a sales girl on the floor. I did that for a year. They put me in sporting goods because I had been on my high school tennis team. So that was pretty funny. And so I did that. And then I got into their buying program. And I started doing that. And those hours were crazy because you work Christmas, Hanukkah, every nights, days, weekends. And I luckily got pregnant and had three children, and it just became impossible. So I stopped and I was a stay-at-home mom for, I guess, till my youngest one got to go to school, and the older ones are like 5 and 6 years older than her. And what I would do is I would drop the kids off at school like 7:30 in the morning, and I was the first one. Oh, and so what happened is I needed a job, but I couldn't work for someone. And I was on a friend's boat, Stuart Miller. He owns Lennar, and they're the largest home builder in the US. And he said, "Why don't you get a real estate license?" And I said, "I've never met anyone who's a realtor." And he said, "Well, go do it." So I took the course, and I figured this would be great for me because I could, move it around with my kids. Of course, now I realize that's ridiculous because we work nights and weekends and holidays. But at the beginning, I didn't have any business. So I went to the local real estate store, company. There were two on Miami Beach at that time. Now there's 200. And I started working there, but I would drop the kids off at school, and then I would get into the office like 7:30, quarter to 8 in the morning. I'd be the first one in. And what I did was, it was one big open room, and there were desks like lined up. And they said to me, "You sit at that desk and you share it with this girl named Jill Zeder." And I just started being the first one in, and then I would leave every day at like before 2 to go pick up my kids from school, and then I'd be mom. And then when they'd go to sleep, I did whatever real estate I needed to. And that's sort of my life that went on. And Jill and I started to, say, can you handle this person? I got to pick up my kids at school. She, I was a morning person, so she'd give me the morning, I'd give her the afternoon. And after we did that for, I don't know, several years, on a handshake, we said, let's be partners because it was too confusing. Like, is that your buyer? Is that your seller? Is that and we just said, let's split it 50-50. And that way there'll be no problems. And that's been kind of, I think, part of the success of that. She has her own little world and I have my world. And then what happened was we started to be like the top producers in Miami, the top in Florida, and we'd got in like the big grouping in the United States, and we really started to move the needle and with business. And I think what it was you have to have passion in this business. If you don't, you burn out because it's a roller coaster. You make a deal, you feel great. You lose a deal, you feel bad, and it never stops on that roller coaster. Like it's never like you just get up there and stay. And I learned to pivot and change and enjoy that. And one of the things that you just asked me was, you know, why didn't you stay by yourself? You were doing great, you were fine. Why did you start partnering with
Mhm.
Jill? And then I'll explain to you the other people that added on. Was I always wanted to do the best I could. So knew and understood I knew this much. Maybe someone else knew that much. So it's a very competitive business. So you can't always go to other people and say, what do you have or what are you doing? You worry about them calling the client or knowing the client. But when you have a partner, it's home team. So, I had another brain sitting there and it was nice. And when you get high, you don't really need a hug, but when you get down, you do. And so it worked for me also in scheduling and my kids' life and all that. So, um, at the beginning too, what happened was that my kids got older and I wanted them to go to summer camp and I was just starting as an agent, so I didn't have those dollars. And so I went and worked at the camp. The camp owner offered me a job, and I went there for the summer with the kids, and Jill took over the summer. And I loved it. And I did it for a couple of years, and she called me up and she said, it's mere camp. So I said, okay, I think they could do camp on their own. I'm coming back. And I went full force into it at that time. And my kids were older and in school, and that was a perfect time for me. And I'm trying to think. And so then what happened was those kids grew up, and one of them was my son, Danny. And he went to law school at University of Miami, and he got a JD MBA and was getting his MBA. That was like 17, 18 years ago. Believe it or not, that's when the internet just started. And
Mm.
we had a website, and it had pictures of the ocean and fish like we were Miami Beach. We didn't really understand it. No one really understood it. And he said, look, I'm doing my MBA in this and I'm going to redo your website. And what he did, which was very clever, at that time, websites were primitive in the real estate. He started to study other people's websites that had them. And the one that he liked the best wasn't a real estate one. It was the one Tiffany's had, because Tiffany's took like a beautiful diamond necklace or bracelet and gave it like a clear page with that one diamond necklace or that one set of earrings, very clean, and had definitive colors, that turquoise and the white. And he kind of cut and pasted and copied a little and morphed it into real estate, where we would showcase each house on its own instead of 10 on a page. Um, I know nowadays that's common, but that was unheard of. And I'd say the
Mm.
biggest compliment was within the year of bringing out our website, also, he was like, you don't have SEO, you don't have, we didn't even know that we didn't have that, right? Because, and we just said to him, Danny, you take that and run with it. And he did. And while he was in law school, all the kids at University of Miami were like, where should I live? You're from here. And he started realizing, like, I'm going to get my real estate license. And he did. And by the time he graduated, he was interning in law firms and he didn't really love it. And he thought that it would take years and years and years to get up to the front. And he just said, I think I'm going to work with you and I'm going to start with this website thing. And he took like the things we didn't want, the rentals. It was also short sales at that time. But he really invested into the website, which now we know is a critical part of business. And then he joined us. And for me, honestly, that was a pivotal change because it was like, he's your age. And it, it was, what I've real,
Hmm.
you don't know when you're walking down the line sometimes what you're doing, but it was, if you don't evolve and change in this business, you die. That's just it. And
Hmm.
I've always felt like I'm a very receptive person. And so, I'll say all the time, try it. What's the big deal? We'll try it. And what happens? It doesn't work. Okay, we don't keep it going. And we just said to Danny, go for it. And he did, and he took off with it. But he's a smart, hardworking guy. And he joined our firm, and it was like, we call it now first generation, us, and then second generation. And I think you need those new ideas, those fresh ideas, because if you just stay with what you know and say, I'm number one, I'm not changing, and I don't need anyone else, you don't have the capacity to move and groove. And so, and then he was able to get my daughter Hillary to come in. She's 5 years younger than him. She was working in New York on Comcast doing their marketing, which is pretty funny. And so she came down. And for me, it became like, okay, we got the Hertzbergs. Jill Eber had a sister who was always her wingman, the Ebers. And then the crazy part is the year before the pandemic, we were traveling so much, like to Coral Gables and doing deals. And we kept working with this family called the Zeders. And they were a mirror family of us. So it was a mother, a son, and a daughter. It's crazy that it was like that. They worked for EWM. And we approached them and said, we're doing so much business, and you guys will have referrals to the beach, and we're going to have referrals to Gables. And, it's better to be a united front. And so they left DWN and joined us. And then the next year was like a fizzy party because the pandemic came in and it was like the city went crazy and we had all these people. And so now there's 8 of us. There's the Zeder team, the Hertzberg and the Ebers. And we're together, we're separate silos now. And we each run our own shows, but we're a collective group for the greater good. And we're inside Caldwell Banker. And the last 4 years, we've been the number one team in the United States of any company, Sotheby's, Caldwell, Compass. Um, and that first year after the pandemic, we did 2.2 billion.
It's
And right
amazing.
now we're at 1.7 billion. So I guess for me to answer your questions is I love what I do. I've got my family in it. I've got my friends in it. I have an incredible city I live and work in. Like this city, I could be that same hardworking girl in Kansas and it wouldn't be like it is here. So that was lucky that I was here. And, and I have great people working with me. Obviously, you have to have a team, can't do it alone. And, I guess I still am that. I became at the camp, I started out as like like sort of like a mother helper because the counselors are 18 and 20. But I became eventually the camp director. And I realized I like people. I enjoy camaraderie. I enjoy the group. So it works with me. Ta da! There you go.
So earlier on, Jill, when you're like carving out your own niche, like how did you start to find your own lane? Because there were other brokers at the time, there were other people trying to to handle these types of transactions. What did you do different that gave you like this maybe this edge, or this, what was like kind of your own lane initially?
I think my own lane is still my own lane in that I'm pretty driven and I I really really want to do the best I can. So it's, I try to take things as far as I can, and we're a service business, and in the end you have to provide a service, and what the service is understanding to return calls, to do emails, to do the research, to find out the comps, to find out what's going on. And it's very important the knowledge you have. And
Mhm.
knowledge is power. And so I'm a big reader. I always ask questions. I'm a questions person. So, if a deal happens, I want to know who bought it, who sold it, why did they pay that, what went on. I guess it's just the nature of my personality. And so, you know, I guess I mean, even working in the department store, it's like, what do you want? What do you need? Whatever you need. You don't like it, take it back, like that service. And, coming into this, working at camp, what do the campers need? What do the counselors need? Like, that's always been my
Mhm.
world. My father was a pediatrician in North Miami Beach. It was like he was taking care of our village. Like every kid in my school went to him, and it's just I've I'm very comfortable doing that. And I think now what's happened is there's there's not that big difference between my work and my play. My play is
Mhm.
my work, and my work is my play. And I try to separate, but it all goes together. Um, and I really, really care. I really care, and I want to be smart, and I want to be smarter, and I want to try new things. And you know, I guess when I lose a deal or something like bad happens or whatever, I've just learned how to channel that. One of the things I've always did was run on the beach or on Miami Beach. It's not that difficult. And, for years I ran marathons. I mean, I started being, go run for a mile, and then I wanted to do 2 miles, and I wanted to do three. Then it was 26.2. It was a marathon. Like I always try to, really do the best I can. And also with my family and my community, um, we're very charitable. I really care about the planet Earth and, people. I really do. I don't have to work on that. It just sort of happens.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely see the, how you're driven and in all aspects of life. And this is something that you care about. So you've had to build a lot of great relationships throughout your career so far. This is like you mentioned, a service business, but it's really relationship based. What goes into like getting these types of relationships with successful people that you can connect the deals entirely, and then also maintain them over years and years and years, and having them come back to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question that people, would like to know. So, you know, people focus on your biggest deals. Like we just sold the most expensive house in Miami for 122 million. Um, is that you start with, well, for me, I started with nothing. So I did those rentals that no one wanted, that people walk in the office and it's raining out and they're tourists and they just want something to do. And you know, they're like building blocks. And what what happens is eventually, if you've treated those people well, they all, there's a book called Raving Fans. Do you know that book?
No.
Anyway, it's a short read. And basically, they've done all sorts of studies. You can advertise, you can market, you can put billboards up and do whatever you want. But there's nothing like a raving fan. And a raving fan means I took care of you. You ended up in a home you never thought you were going to be in, and you love it, and you're happy. And your friend comes over and they say, you know what? We're thinking of moving. And you recommend Jill Hertzberg. It's like that personal recommendation is huge. And then you take care of that one, and you take care of its longevity too, and you keep that pace and you keep it going. Eventually you get to those people that you're talking about, the Eric Schmidts, the Ken Griffins, the biggest and the boldest in the industry. And you get basically that first hello has to be strong. So when they ask you, okay, I'm thinking of buying land, I'm thinking of buying a home, you have to know what you're talking about, because in 1 minute you're transparent, right? But if you can, I remember I worked with Jane Toll, Bob Toll from Toll Brothers. They're one of the biggest builders in America. And I was referred to them. So there I am, I'm getting a chance, right?
Mm.
At dealing with a very serious person. And the wife got on the phone and she said to me, listen, I was referred to you by this person, but my friend has a friend who's a realtor, and I think I'm going to work with them. They're my friend's friend or something like that. And I said, okay, but just give me a chance.
Mm.
Let me explain something to you. And she was from up north. And I spontaneously said to her, um, I want to explain to you Miami, because she really didn't know Miami at all. And I took her from, one point to the other. I explained to her each community, what without losing her, like if you drag it out too long, people are like gone. My mom was a bridge teacher and she said, you got to say what you're saying 5 minutes or less or they're gone. So like I could explain to them, here's Star Island. This is how much land is. This is homes. Now we're going to go to Hibiscus, to Palm, and move them down the beach. Explain to her, the yin and the yang of everything. And I was done. And she said to me, okay, you know more than he does. He just started. I'll work with you. So that's sort of what I'm saying. Whatever you need to do, but you need to know stuff. So you need to go to the brokers opens. You need to read the hot sheet every day. You need to because you can't stumble because there's someone else there. So, but
Mhm.
if you stay on track and then you bring, and of course, I brought them to the promised land, to the most incredible property, and they love it. And in fact, I called them recently because it's one of the best properties in the city, and told them that honestly, there was a qualified, serious buyer to buy their property. She said, money can't buy you love. Nothing's going to get me to sell this ever. So I said, although it's a little, I'm not so happy because she said, I know the commission check would have been huge. But I said, I'm so happy you're happy. That's really what I mean. And I'm thrilled to hear you're happy. Enjoy it. And I think if you just keep that rhythm and that beat going in your heart and your soul, it comes through. And it's like if you recommend a doctor and they have good results, they can't be perfect, but you stay with that person because you believe in them. And then, of course, you know, experience is the thing that allows you to negotiate. I didn't have these skills when I started 30 years ago, right? But you've been in enough deals and negotiated enough deals with all sorts of different personalities. Some where you just click and you're like, we're trying to make the deal, let's keep it together, let's do it. And others where the agent is very difficult or the attorneys are very difficult and they're almost, quite frankly, deal killers. And you
Mm.
have to be able to like take a deep breath and find their lane, which you're talking about, that they can understand because they're not on your lane. They're different. Everything about them is different. And you have to find a way to penetrate because at the end, like some agents will say to me, I love this one. They'll say, well, we're not accepting that number. We're just not accepting that. And I'll say, are you part owner? Is it we? Or is it they're not accepting the offer? Why don't you separate yourself and bring the client the offer we're getting and tell me what the client says or allow me to get on the call? And they're trying so hard to, do what they think is the best, but in a way, it's harmful because how do you know what your client in the end of the day is going to take? So it's better to say, listen, my client just said, da da da, instead of we said, and get rid of those royal we's and get down to business and, you know, focus where you're trying to go. And I think that's a big part of it.
Definitely is. It's a great point. Just the last question I have: what do you aspire to accomplish now? Like, you've done a lot throughout your life, your career already. You've built an incredibly successful team. You've gotten people in the homes that they want, that they're happy with, that they love. What do you feel like you haven't done yet that you want to accomplish?
You know, the funny part is I wake up every morning and I think, oh my gosh, I got to do something. I haven't done anything, or, what? Oh my God, I need to get to work, and my kids will laugh, or my office will laugh and say, "Oh yeah, you need to get to work," but you have that image that was yesterday,
Mhm.
and today's today, and it's tomorrow I'm looking at. So I'm done with yesterday, and I think as long as I feel like that, maybe I learned something from yesterday, but I don't look in the rearview mirror. I'm not going backwards. I'm going forwards.
Mhm. It's a great way to look at things. Well, Jill, I appreciate you taking the time and doing this. I think you've had a huge imprint and mark on Miami and on South Florida real estate in general, and the kind of people living here now. Who knows if they would be without what you've done. And I'm excited to see what you're going to do next and the new heights you're going to go to. So appreciate you taking the time and doing this and wishing you much success.
Thank you so much. Shalom.